Good afternoon. Glad to see the session off and running. Some good progress, and I'm particularly want to talk today about a tremendous opportunity the legislature has this year to coordinate our response to homelessness, particularly in our rights of ways, in our highways, and our freeways, and our byways. We really need to give an adequate priority to those people who are encamped along our highways and our rights of way. The public is demanding this, and we have a bill that acknowledges all of these concerns and gets us solutions in months rather than years. And I'm joined today by local leaders who share this view that we need immediate action. I'm very pleased to see an amended version of Senate Bill 5662 advance. It's on its way to the Senate Ways and Means Committee. I proposed this bill because our homelessness crisis, it is a sad reality, and we know that it affects every part of our state. And it really does demand urgent action in many ways. We have to move more quickly and compassionately to serve the thousands of people who are now living under bridges, on our sidewalks, on the shoulders of our freeways, and we need to do this now. While people are seeking an ultimate solution of long-term permanent housing, we need to get them under a roof in safe private facilities now. Now, we know the reasons for homelessness are many and varied. We know that there is no one-size-fits-all solution, but we do know that moving with speed is a good decision right now. Now, we have not been passive in the face of this in the past years. I just want to note that. Since 2017, we have tripled our state's investment, helping cities and counties build affordable housing in various housing and shelter options. Over the last 3 biennia, the state has invested in the development of more than 9,600 affordable care and shelter units. Some of these are in service today, some of them are still under construction. But we know 9,600 is not enough. And that's why I'm proposing this year an additional $494 million in capital fund investments to acquire and build more units. So we have made significant investment, but obviously the problem has got worse. We know funding is crucial, but funding is not enough to move quickly against this urgent situation. As more units are built, it begs the question, how do we work with local governments to get people into them in a compassionate, meaningful, and coordinated manner? So the team this legislation would create will help local jurisdictions with prioritizing some of these units that will be brought online to help people move who are today encamped on our right-of-ways towards permanent housing. Now, I understand that service providers and local leaders can face seemingly unending challenges in prioritizing to whom they should reach out to and how to best help them. They do know their communities best, and they are extraordinarily dedicated to this work. They are compassionate people. But we in state government have a stewardship responsibility for our rights of way and a moral obligation to people who are today living in squalor along our rights of way. So this bill clarifies that as local jurisdictions are developing their action plans, they must consider how to transition people encamped on today's state's right-of-ways. This legislation does not prescribe how local jurisdictions do this, nor does it authorize sweeping people out for no reason and no place to go. But with record numbers of shelter and housing opportunities becoming available, we need to do more to be more coordinated in our approach across jurisdictions to respond to these challenges and the challenge that these encampments pose both to the individuals and to the public at large, as well as public access to the areas that do belong and are expected to be used by the public. Certainly that includes our roads. So we need, the people in the state need to see action this year in our communities. We know that a moral society is one that helps those most in need, and we are not meeting that need at the moment. It is a moral choice and a right choice to transition people out of these encampments, and we have come to accept this as too commonplace. We need to act. We're not seeing enough progress. This bill will give us a tool to accelerate this so that we find solution in months rather than years and decades. So we have some very dedicated people in this regard to address us today about this bill. I want to start by thanking King County Dow Constantine to talk about his observations. And Dow, if you are on the line, I'd love to listen to your thoughts.
Well, thank you, Governor. I am, and I appreciate the invitation to be here today, along with all of these great local leaders. From every corner of the state, urban, rural, from small towns to skyscrapers, every community has seen the all too common results of the combination of housing costs rising and wages staying flat. And homelessness is happening really across the state, in every community, in every region. Intergenerational inequities intersect with housing and behavioral health crises to affect every part of Washington. While it may look different in Seattle than it does in Yakima, it is a challenge we all face and that we all want to meaningfully address. Leaders from around the state know that just hoping the problem fixes itself, that magically housing supply is going to catch up and that folks are going to be able to afford a safe place to live is just not realistic. Wages are not going to go up as quickly as they need to for that to happen. It takes thoughtful, targeted action at scale, and that's why we're here today. Governor, your proposal is important, and legislation can change how our system responds to individuals experiencing homelessness, including those who are experiencing homelessness in and around the state right-of-ways, by connecting people sleeping outside to the services they need to come inside, and not merely to be moved from one place to another, but begin to be able to take their lives back, to be able to move forward again. We used this approach with City Hall Park, for example, working with our partners at the City of Seattle in downtown Seattle. When people are offered quality shelter, when they're offered affordable housing that meets their needs, they almost always accept that option. But we don't have enough options for unsheltered residents right now. And that's why I'm grateful the governor has paired his proposal with a comprehensive services approach, with robust funding to scale housing and shelter options. Now, last year, King County acquired with state help, with authority granted by the state legislature, new supportive housing units, more than anywhere else in the state, nearly 900 and more to come. We're working to complete moving another 500 people into enhanced shelter. But despite our ability to rapidly purchase units, we are facing the same workforce limitations that we are seeing everywhere in public and private settings across the state. We have to be able to recruit and retain quality staff who can turn these buildings into homes and help turn lives around. We can't provide the wraparound services that we know work, that allow people to heal and take charge of their lives, without the workforce to deliver them. And at the same time, we need more investments in our infrastructure, more housing options, and that's what makes Governor Inslee's comprehensive approach so important, and why the legislature needs to get this bill to the governor's desk. So I'm committed to working with the governor, the legislature, and our local communities represented by these leaders here today to make meaningful, person-centered change. The leaders you're going to hear from in just a second all know that to meet this moment of crisis, every community in our state has to do its part. All of us know the intricacies of our own communities and the unique challenges we face. And fundamental change is hard, but at the end of the day, it's the right thing to do for the people of our state. And I'm grateful to the governor, to legislative champions like Representative Macri and Representative Chop, Senator Frocht, and Senator Cooter for their partnership as we turn the tide on homelessness. So let's get this done. Let's get it done for every community in Washington so that no Washingtonian is outside in the cold any longer. Thank you, Governor.
Thanks, Dow. Thanks for your leadership. It is a joy to see every time you put one of these new units online. You've made real progress. I want to note that we are matching this bill with budgetary proposals. We have proposed over $300 million to actually acquire and stand up rapidly available housing for people. Housing where you have a roof over your head and you have privacy and security. And we're seeing these units become online if we can get the funding into local governments and nonprofits' hands. We are also joining that with a proposal for $40 million to help with coordination people, to help with the transportation, the security, the treatment coordination while this process of moving off the state right-of-ways into safe shelter and safe private places to live. And so we think we've matched it with an appropriate level of investment to help local communities. With that, we now have Mayor Harrell, who's off to a great start and a great bulldog. Mayor Harrell.
Thank you, Governor Inslee. Make sure that my technology is working. I'm very honored to be here. I want to thank you for your leadership in bringing this bill forward to fruition here. This is without denigrating anyone's efforts in the past. I think this is an unprecedented level of collaboration and partnership that this city of Seattle, as an example, so desperately needs. And I want to thank Senator Patty Kuderer again for sponsoring in the Senate. So we obviously share the goal of increasing safety on our state's owned right-of-ways, both for those experiencing homelessness and for the drivers on our highways. For those that appreciate the beauty that a city like Seattle and a state like Washington have become known for nationally. I think this legislation actually will help us coordinate a response between the city of Seattle and the state of Washington that, again, epitomizes the kind of collaboration and partnership that I've been experiencing just for the brief few weeks that I've been in office. My conversations with you, Governor, and my conversations with our state legislative leaders have again made me realize that we have a very caring legislative body, and certainly friends in the state that understand the plight we have here in Seattle. When I look at the numbers, and again, we know how legislation works, these are real dollars. North of 800 million, for example, in this kind of investment. This is the level of resources that we believe are needed when you have north of 300 million in housing acquisition, 100 million or so for enhanced shelter options, 50 million for behavioral support services and for right-of-way outreach and site remediation. These are real dollars, taxpayer dollars, but an investment in communities and cities and economic drivers. I am ecstatic about our ability to partner with the state. And I'll close by saying that I know that many of my constituents here in Seattle, they want rapid fixes, rapid solutions. But we all realize that a lot of these issues of homelessness and public safety have been decades in the making, not just in Seattle or in the state of Washington, but throughout our country. I think it's going to be this kind of collaboration between a leader like Governor Inslee and the other regional and city leaders on this call of this press conference. It's going to take this kind of collaboration to truly move the needle. And I welcome it. We're ready. We will use our tax dollars wisely, efficiently, and effectively. And for that, I thank you and the leaders in Olympia.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for your early action in this regard. We now have Mayor Woodards, who has done some really creative work in Tacoma. I got to see one of the tiny village communities that was just a joyous place to visit, a place that the neighbors and really liked. Getting to know new neighbors has been really successful, and Mayor Woodards has led in these efforts. Mayor Woodards, we're looking forward to your comments.
Great. Thank you, Governor, and thank you so much for inviting us all here today. It really is an honor to be here with my colleagues from across the state. But Governor, I want to first extend my true appreciation to you for stepping up to support cities grappling with this crisis and its impacts to the health and safety of our community. And that means everyone in our community. This collaborative statewide approach is important because all cities are seeking solutions for how to support our current houseless neighbors. As a smaller unit of government, it is difficult for cities to support the myriad of needs, whether that be sheltering, affordable housing, behavioral health, hygiene needs, and so many more. But I'm so glad that both the governor and our state delegation have been supportive in coming forward with solutions over the years. And this year, as Mayor Harrell said, we have an unprecedented opportunity to invest in support of this crisis. So let me be clear, Governor, and I tend to be transparent and honest, that I do not support sweeps, and I do not believe this is anywhere near a sweeps bill. This is about a statewide coordinated support bill to get people into housing. The unfortunate reality is that cities across the state are having to move encampments to address impacts to health and safety of not only city property and our neighbors, but our houseless neighbors as well. For example, today in Tacoma, the encampment under 705 is a heartbreaking example of this. Because of health and safety issues, we are now forced to move an encampment, but also while offering the resources we currently have access to. I wish that we as a city today had the resources proposed in Senate Bill 5662 and could offer them increased access for the needed rapid supportive housing and wraparound services. We know this is a very complex issue for every community, but having state support will allow us to better show up, serve, and put people on a better path to permanent supportive housing. We've been out here on our own as cities and towns in the state trying to do what we can. And I just can't state enough how grateful we are for a statewide solution to an issue that crosses city boundaries and county boundaries. As we all know, this is a complex issue and we need all hands on deck in a thoughtful, caring, and compassionate way if we're really going to address the true issue at hand. Bold investments like this can help us make true progress in serving our neighbors experiencing homelessness. And again, I'm grateful for Pierce County Senator Trudeau for signing on, to the governor's office, and to all the sponsors on this bill for bringing it forward. It offers a true solution for everyone who lives in our community, whether they are housed or unhoused. Thank you, Governor.
Well, thank you, Mayor. And I think one of the keys to your success is you have made sure that this is supported housing, that people do have the mental health treatment that they need. They do have the crisis intervention they need. And that's one of the reasons we proposed $40 million to you to help do those things. And where you've done that, you've been very, very successful. So thanks for lending your strong voice to this effort. And now we have Spokane Councilmember Wilkerson. Spokane's doing some really creative things. Could you share your views?
Well, also, Governor, I want to thank you for inviting me to share my views and for this proposal. So I want to speak just quickly. I've been in this arena, my family, since 1976. We own and operate an assisted living facility for people who are mentally ill and developmentally disabled. And I have witnessed firsthand the changes and the challenges that this population has encountered. I talk about the continuum of care. And for me, that is supportive housing is a big piece of that. There is a bottleneck. I have people in my facility who are really ready for the next phase of their life, but because they have no housing, they are still with us. And then that backlogs the people who are at Eastern State Hospital who truly do need my level of care in our community. I agree. We can and must do better. So this bold approach, Governor, with real money behind it, is what's really important in showing the leadership. You know, we talk a lot about drug addicted, mental health. We just throw those words around our communities from people who haven't really gotten in the trenches. So this bill that will invest more in mental health, which is a critical component of meeting some of these challenges going forward, will be transformative. I'm excited about that. For the first time, Spokane is truly faced with encampment along our state lands. Off of I-90, we have an encampment, and last year we just had our first death in that encampment. So it's not only making those people safe as they deserve, but the people around them and the community safe. It's that partnership that this bill will provide. I'm excited because it allows us to be flexible. It allows us to be nimble. It allows us to be responsive and unique to meet the needs in our own communities. That's what is most exciting. But also in this, it talks about providing a general rate increase to behavioral health providers. That's a field that everybody cannot do. It takes special people, and they need to be compensated for that because it is a heavy lift coming up. So going forward, that stabilization centers, we have 3 in Spokane. Our police have spoke about how that has given them another resource to locking people up when they really need the interventions of mental health services and medical services. So again, housing, mental health, what everyone else has said, I am in support of this. I am appreciative of your leadership because every community has not taken on these challenges in a holistic approach. This bill, to me, gives us a holistic approach instead of piecemeal. And so if we got a plan that we can plug in where the needs are, I'm excited about this and what Spokane can do. And this will give us the opportunity of not pitting our citizens against our businesses, against our neighborhoods, but it will allow us to work together to accomplish what we all want, all of our Washingtonians to have a roof over their heads and be safe. So I really thank you for this, and I thank you for the time to allow me to speak on this.
Well, thank you. Keep up the great work in Spokane. This is a statewide issue, and I'm glad we all recognize that. We now have City Council President Juarez. Madam President.
Thank you. Thank you, Governor Inslee, for that introduction. I haven't been called Madame yet, but thank you. As you know, my name is Deborah Juarez, and I'm president of the Seattle City Council. In 2015, the city of Seattle declared a state of emergency on homelessness. However, our struggle to address this humanitarian crisis started long ago. Our inability to coordinate with multiple jurisdictions was a major obstacle to housing those in need. Senate Bill 5662 is a solution as a truly collaborative effort between all levels of government and the tribes to shelter our relatives. Encampment sweeps don't work. We know that. We do know, and we knew that well before the Ninth Circuit Court ruling in the Boise case. What does work is the basic understanding that this is a statewide crisis, and living on I-5 or any public right-of-way is inhumane, dangerous, and cruel. Housing is a human right, and I look forward to working with our state and regional partners to address the lack of housing. It is our responsibility as elected officials to ensure that everyone in Washington has a place to call home. And again, Governor, thank you for inviting me here today.
Well, thank you. Thanks for your work. Thanks for all our speakers' work. I think this is, as I said in Casablanca, the beginning of a beautiful friendship between the state and these local communities. And we need that working relationship to move forward. So thank you all. I'm going to let you go talk to your legislators now and suggest that they pass this bill and these appropriations as well. So thank you very much. I'm going to continue some comments. Folks are welcome to stay, but I have some other comments if I may share. I want to talk about the things that are in addition to this bill. This is an ambitious bill, but we need more than that, which is just in the bill as well. Our proposed budget have proposed $815 million toward addressing this crisis in multiple ways, in addition to this bill. I'm pleased to say that there is growing support for the things we are proposing with this investment. to include crisis resources, investments in new housing units, obviously, specialized landlord support for tenants with behavioral health needs, and medical respite funding. These additional investments help to create the environment where people can thrive and get on their feet. And particularly, I want to highlight the crisis response programs. A lot of these people are in crisis, and we have to get them through the crisis to get them in a stable position so they can be long-term housed. And I've seen these facilities in in Bellingham. They're working on one in Spokane. This is a tremendous asset. I'm glad we're going to find a way to help cities advance them. The goal is to have early intervention to de-escalate situations which unfortunately frequently heretofore have involved law enforcement. This is part of, in some sense, a de-escalation strategy as well as one to deal with homelessness. We know that medical respite programs can provide support for someone who's been discharged from a hospital and where their treatment is complete, but they certainly need transition services. So it helps clear hospital space as well. As you know, we have a crisis in our hospitals today because of COVID. This allows us to free hospital space and allow people to really get the kind of services that they need. So this is a short session, but we hope that we make progress in this regard. Before we close, I'd like to make some comments about our current status with COVID. We are very pleased that we are seeing meaningful declines in large areas of our state, but we know hospitalizations and deaths, unfortunately, have not gone down dramatically. We hope that that will occur, and typically that does following a decline in our infection rate. But we also know that infections are likely to continue to increase for some period of time, particularly east of the Cascades. We have saved thousands of lives. I certainly have talked with you about this before because we've done some good work as a state. But we still do have challenges. Franklin County has the second highest COVID infection rate in the United States, and with Whitman and Benton counties among the top 10. Recently, Sacred Heart Hospital had more people in the hospital than they'd ever had before through this entire pandemic. So I'm glad the National Guard is able to help some of our hospitals, and we want to thank them for pitching in. The Guard they've done virtually everything we've asked them to for the last 2 years. We know the Omicron variant has resulted in record levels of infection, but we know the best way to fight it is to get vaccinated. And depending on your age, you are anywhere from 5 to 8 times more likely to be hospitalized if you have not been vaccinated. And we now have access to vaccines, to boosters. This is such a proven response. We hope people, particularly if you have had 2 vaccines, I can tell you if you get your booster, you're going to significantly decrease the chance that you have been hospitalized, that you would be hospitalized. So we know vaccination and boosters save lives. And while we continue targeting communities with the lowest vaccination rates, we're also investing in testing and masks, as you know. In January alone, the state distributed 9.8 million masks through the Department of Health, and the Department of Health's immensely popular portal has seen to it that over 2 million tests will be delivered to Washingtonians. Many, if not most of them, have already in their hands. So we're making progress. We have more to make. With that, you may fire it when ready, Gridley.
First, we'll go to Rachel with AP. Go ahead, Rachel.
Hi, good afternoon. I have a couple of questions, one for any local officials that are still on the call, and then one on a separate topic for the governor. So for the local officials, are there any specific additional actions that would help better address homelessness in your communities that current legislation doesn't cover? And then for the governor, insurer groups have filed 2 legal actions seeking to stop the credit scoring ban that Insurance Commissioner Mike Kreidler announced this week, saying he bypassed the legislative process and exceeded his authority. What are your thoughts on that new rule, and do you agree with how the Insurance Commissioner went about this process?
I'll let the city folks answer first, if they'd like. If anyone's still there.
Yeah, I'm here. Can I hear the question again, ma'am?
I'm just curious. I'm just curious if there are any specific additional actions that would help better address homelessness in your communities that's not covered either by the governor's budget proposal or the current legislation that's in play right now.
Well, I think the specific piece, and I said this in my comments, is that what we have a state-funded program, it looks like statewide, that is going to contract with us local folks on the ground that see the devastation along any major transit spine corridor. And what we've never had before, what we're going to have now, thanks to the governor, is not just the coordination and it being funded, but actually having the data where we know exactly where success is and where success isn't. And also having, at least for us, for Snohomish, King, and Pierce, having all of us talking to each other. It's wonderful to have Mayor Harrell here and Mayor Woodard, because I talk to them offline about these issues all the time. How good is this going to be for us to have this particular office, the OIC, the Office of Intergovernmental Coordination, that's going to be a hotspot that we can actually work with them? Because right now, this is exactly what we have. We have, or at least I can speak, and I know the Mayor Harrell probably can echo this better than me, is that we have property along I-5 that runs through the city of Seattle, in which we have constituents and residents and our relatives that are living outside, where we can't get on that property because it's WashDOT property. And WashDOT is saying sometimes we can't go in that property without an escort, whether it's SPD or fire. And then on the other side, we have constituents and people that are concerned that we are not going in there to clean things up. And we're like, well, that's not our property. So this is a wonderful way for us to leverage local resources with the help of the state. And so for that, I want to thank the governor, and I'll let Mayor Harrell speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Council President Juarez, for those comments. And I don't disagree with anything you said. So in my direct answer would be, the buckets of investments are the right ones, whether it's housing acquisitions or enhanced shelter or some of the behavioral support services. The buckets are right, and our teams gave input, and the input was listened to by the governor and other folks in Olympia. So we are comfortable there. The coordination piece that Council President Juarez talked about is critical. And these are staff-to-staff conversations. There are some legal issues associated with properties we can or cannot go on without sometimes written permissions. And so we are confident we'll work out the logistics. But in terms of the buckets, the segments of investments, these are the right investments.
Thank you. As the insurance company issue, here's the way I look at it. Imagine a retired teacher. She's been driving for 50 years and never had a ticket and never had an accident. And then she has a heart attack and has, some unpaid medical bills for a period of time. So on her credit score takes a hit. I don't think it's fair for the insurance company to whack her on her next insurance premium when she's been driving safely for 50 years. We should ask the insurance industry to evaluate people on their driving behavior and their actual behavior, not on some, a half-baked proposal that they find convenient. And I just don't think it's fair to good drivers to punish them if they've had some credit difficulty. So I support the general direction the insurance commissioner has suggested. I have not had a chance to be briefed on the particular proposal he's made. I assume I will be, but I think this is the appropriate fair thing in the state of Washington. We should ask insurance companies to evaluate citizens fairly on their driving record.
Next question comes from Joe with the Seattle Times. Go ahead, Joe.
Hello, two-part question. First for the governor and second for Mayor Harrell and Councilwoman Juarez, whoever can speak to it. For the governor, since this bill out of committee has been limited to DOT-controlled lands, do you have an idea of potentially houseless people that this bill might touch on? And then from the Seattle delegation, I'm curious to hear more about what impediments WashDOT has given you. Are they not allowing you on the properties? Are they not allowing you to get escorts to go on there? Just like to hear a little more.
Joe, you broke up a little bit. What were you asking again? Something about DOT or non-DOT?
Yeah, the bill out of committee restricts us to DOT-controlled lands, the focus. So I'm just curious if you have a sense of how many encampments and how many potentially houseless people would benefit from this program? And then for the Seattle delegation, curious to learn a little bit more about the impediments WSDOT is giving you to get onto land in Seattle.
I do not have it, but I can tell you it's too many. That's what I can tell you. It's all up and down I-5 corridor, and it's not just Seattle, and east-west as well. So virtually anywhere you look, you can see this difficulty. So I will try to get some number. If we can give that to you, Joe, I will do so.
And I'll respond to the impediments or lack thereof. The last couple of years, I've not been in office, and so I can't speak to what's happened in the last couple of years. I can speak several years ago. It wasn't so much that there were impediments, that there was just a process by which the city is required to take action on state property. And I think there are some documents or an approval process. I can't say that they were unnecessarily burdensome, but it was just a little clunky. And so now things might have changed. So I'm actually asking my executive team to look at a streamlined process so we can get people a house. And so I'm confident, but I can't really speak to any specific impediments that exist that we have to overcome right now.
If I can follow up after Mayor Harrell. Ma'am, if you look at the bill on page 1, it does state a number that there are more than 1,750 unsanctioned encampments that exist on public rights of way. I don't know how many of those are actually within the city of Seattle or Tacoma or how that's broken up, but if you have over 1,700 encampments, and I know I represent District 5 from the north end, and just from driving down North Seattle, Lake City Way, on I-5, sometimes I can count up to 16 encampments between North Seattle and downtown Seattle. So when you talk about what maybe some of the issues are with WSDOT, it isn't anything, malignant where, we don't have WSDOT cooperation. It's just a matter of jurisdiction and safety. I know under a former couple mayors ago, when we had to clean out the jungle, we had fires, we had sex trafficking going on, we had fatalities. And so I'm not saying that people who live on I-5 or in some of these encampments or under the bridges are criminals, but there is some criminal activity. And that was a real concern for us and a concern for WSDOT and the employees of WSDOT to go in there without a police escort. So I don't want to take up too much time, but that is an issue. And again, I can't emphasize enough why I'm happy that the governor is doing this so we can coordinate on a statewide basis and that we can all understand that it's a statewide crisis. So for me, and I'm sure for Mayor Woodard and our friends from Spokane, and certainly I will not speak for our Mayor Harrell, but this has been an ongoing issue. As Mayor Harrell, as you probably know, was on Seattle City Council for 12 years. So this isn't new to us. And so again, I'm looking forward and I'm happy that we're all going to coordinate. So thank you.
If I can add something, there's two ends of the bridge and we need to work on both ends. One is the helpful for the jurisdictions to work together to help people exit the right-of-way. And we're going to accomplish that. But we have to have another end of the bridge, which is a place for those folks to go with good, safe, private housing from a variety of ways, from tiny villages to otherwise. And that part needs some financial assistance, and we put $300 million plus into that end of the bridge to make sure they have a place to go. Both those ends of the bridge are really important. This bill and our budget does both.
Next question comes from Laurel with the Spokesman Review. Go ahead, Laurel.
Hi, Governor. I have two questions. The first on rental assistance. I mean, it does seem like counties and cities are starting to run out of that. Is there any talk with the legislature about what you want to see in the budget for rental assistance or anything else the state can do to help there? And then secondly, on a different housing proposal, your middle housing proposal, the House and the Senate version looks slightly different. The Senate is slightly more farther reaching. Do you have any thoughts on where those are right now and what exactly you want to see in that final version?
Yeah, I don't have any number to give you as rental assistance. I really can't give you any intel on that. If I get some, I will share it with you. The first thing we want to do is to make sure the existing pool of money gets out the door. We've been trying to encourage local communities to accelerate that, and they have been accelerating that. So that I'm focused on that first part first. If I get any more intel, I will share it with you. On the middle housing, what I can tell you is I think the legislature is making real progress. I think they're having real substantive discussions. And I'm encouraged by the status of those discussions. And I hope that they will continue, because I do believe this is extremely important. If we're going to reduce homelessness, we have to have more housing in our urban areas. And I'm looking forward to legislators of figuring out the best way to do that.
Up next, we'll go to Austin with the Northwest News Network. Go ahead, Austin.
Oh, thanks. Governor, and perhaps also for one or more of the city officials, in the interim, why are there not more efforts to try to make the encampments safer, more habitable, cleaner, with the understanding that they're not going to go away overnight? And in terms of the scale of the response, why do we not see more of a disaster level response? I think I've asked before, why not get the National Guard out there? Why not put up sturdier tents, temporary shelters, something that would be more sanitary and safer, frankly?
Well, I think your next question is, why don't I get the National Guard to have long relief for the mariners? They can't solve every problem. They do not have the capacity to solve this problem, and the National Guard are not a solution to every single problem we have in the state of Washington. And they're extremely stretched. They're in the hospitals today, and they've been busy for 2 years. We take these people out of their lives from insurance companies and Boeing and everywhere else, and they come in and volunteer to work. You know, there are limits to that. But more importantly, they just really aren't built for this long-term mission statement. If I asked them to go, I'm sure they would. They'll go anywhere when I ask them to. But they're really not built for this particular mission. As far as why not, I guess the tenor of your question is, why not build a homelessness encampment, a better homelessness encampment 2 feet from the express lanes on I-5? It's just not safe. And there really isn't any way to do that in an effective way. You can't really provide services to people. We don't have access routes. They got to cross the highway to get to where they're going. I really think that's a non-starter. But what we do need is creative thinking on how we do move forward. If I can just spend a minute on this. When I say creative thinking, I think it is necessary for us to do that. I look at some of the creativity around these tiny home villages, and I've gone to several of these, from Moses Lake to Spokane to Tacoma, and I see very great successful models here. People have their own unit, they're in a roof, you have a bed, you have electricity, you have access to nutrition, frequently supportive services, a place to store your goods. And if you talk to the people who are experiencing homelessness, that's really important, is to have some privacy. They may not be asking today for, a fourth floor condominium with a corner apartment, but they need and want privacy and safety. And we're seeing across the state of Washington, they're creating whole communities that are being really successful. And I appreciate the creativity of communities, local community leaders are doing that. That's just one of the models that we hope to accelerate. But no, I don't think that works to try to do that on the side of I-5.
Next question comes from Jerry with the Everett Herald. Go ahead, Jerry. Jerry, are you there?
There you go. Have you unmuted me? There we go. Thank you. Yeah, I guess 2 questions, but since you brought it up, I'll ask about the National Guard. They're a little more than about halfway, or a little more than halfway on their deployment to the hospitals. Have you already made any decisions on whether that'll be extended? Are you getting any feedback on whether it'll be necessary when the 30 days are up? And then secondly, just to follow up the last question, when you said creative thinking, I'm wondering, wouldn't creative thinking be to go in to an existing encampment and replace the torn down tent with a new tent? It's not a service. It would just be putting in an existing encampment, making them safer.
I rarely speak my mind unless I've thought about it, but I'll just give you an immediate reaction. I just think that is a terrible idea. It is not logistically possible. It's not a solution to this problem. A tent next to an express lane is not an acceptable solution. A tiny house village with a private, secure, supportive community is, and that's what we ought to focus on, and that's what we're putting our money on. So I don't believe that that is a wise strategy, and I haven't heard anybody who's thought about this propose that. So That will not get deep consideration. The National Guard question, by the way, I did not bring it out. Austin brought it up because he always brings up the National Guard, no matter what the problem is, from the common cold to the Mariners. But look, the National Guard is a short-term solution to emergency problems. It is not a long-term housing agency where you can take people out. They don't have housing. They don't have ways to set these programs up. It's just not built for the solution set associated with this.
Next question comes from Shauna with McClatchy. Go ahead, Shauna.
Good afternoon, Governor. So my question has to do with some of the police accountability measures. So families today rallied at the Capitol against some of the bills that they considered to be rollbacks of police accountability measures that were passed last year. So what would you tell those families who are concerned about the proposed legislation to modify use of force standards that passed from a House committee today?
Well, I haven't seen the final drafts of those, but what I'm advised is that they, in my book, will refine these proposals to try to make it safer for everybody, for all families. I do think that there is a proposal to make clear what was the legislative intent, that police officers are available to be on hand when mental health professionals would ask them to be on hand during a crisis intervention. That makes imminent sense to me. And there's a proposal to make that very, very clear, just to be there in case there is some difficulty. I think that's safe for everybody concerned. There's another proposal that would allow, and I don't know if this is the one you're referring to or not, that would allow an officer to, for a short period of time, ask people to just kind of stay in place while the officer can sort out who's on first. And I think that is a safe thing for people, for everyone, including these community members, to figure out who's the victim and who's the assailant, and ask people to not be running around in a chaotic situation while the officer tries to sort that out briefly. I think that is a public safety and civil rights good thing to have happen so that other citizens can't hurt other citizens' civil rights. And these frequently officers pull up, and it's very difficult to sort out what's going on in these chaotic situations. So I haven't seen the final version of the bill, but the thrust is something I think I can support, and it's consistent, in my view, of protecting people's civil rights so they don't get injured by another citizen for a brief period of time. I think it's a reasonable approach.
Next question comes from Hannah with Cairo Radio. Go ahead, Hannah.
Hi, if I could, Governor, we are hearing from some of the landlord groups, Rental Housing Association and some others, that there's been a significant loss in the last year of single family rentals up to 10,000, I think specifically even in just King County. I'm wondering what is, if anything, that you are doing, paying attention to that beyond the bill from Senator Doss. And then also for the Seattle officials, President Juarez and Mayor Harrell, I'm wondering if this bill passes for the encampments and the intergovernmental cooperation, how long before you think we would see a visible difference in Seattle?
Well, we want to do this as fast as possible. This is why probably the bulk of the investments I've suggested to be in rapid housing that can be done in months rather than years. That frequently is what you might think of as somewhat non-conventional, like these tiny home villages, and there are many other ways. King County's looking at conversion of motels, for instance. So there's a variety of ways to do that, but it has one thing in common. It's fast, and it's dry, and it's safe, and it provides some privacy to the occupants. That's what we're shooting for, and that's why I put over $300 million out of the $800 million toward that rapid housing. That's why I've proposed the $40 million to help cities move in that direction. How fast that can happen? These villages can be stood up in months rather than years. I think the one last time I talked to Tacoma, it was 6 months from creation to opening. That's rapid in this world we live in. I would hope that we could see that within that period of time. Will that be visible to Washingtonians? I don't know, and that's one of these great frustrations about this. We have made Herculean efforts, but have not got ahead of this. So I hope it would be visible to people because we could show them specific encampments along I-5 that move to specific locations in a hygienic, safe way. I think we will be able to do that within several months if the legislature moves in this direction, and that's relatively fast. The loss of rental, is a tough problem, you know, because we're facing land prices that have gone up so dramatically because of the huge demand, because our economy is so hot. We've got one of the best economies in the United States. Lots of people are moving here, and we simply are not building enough housing to house these people. We have to build more housing, including middle housing. So one of the things we're doing is this middle housing bill that would accelerate or allow the acceleration of building more middle housing in urban areas by removing the artificial restrictions that makes it illegal to build affordable housing in many of these cities. And so I hope that some version of that will move forward so that we can get some more middle housing that therefore will not then lead to the conversion of rental housing to middle housing. So I do think that's part of the solution. It's not the only one.
I'll speak, this is Mayor Harrell speaking to the visible, I think the question, if I'm interpreting the question correctly, is when will we see visible progress on some of these investments or even other investments in homelessness? Well, that's a fair question. And I am hearing daily, even though I've been in the office for 1 month, that they want almost instant solutions to these critical problems. So the short answer with this tranche of funds, I can't honestly say first quarter, second quarter, third quarter. I will follow the governor's lead and say that hopefully within months when the money rolls out, we'll see tangible progress. But I think what's critically important, particularly in all of our homelessness strategies and our affordable housing strategies, that what we'll be publishing within our first quarter is a map, if you will, is where there are homelessness challenges as we speak, and the inventory of projects, such that people can have a measurable plan. So by the end of this year, they will see the template by which we will build upon. So I hear the public's demand for at least seeing the visible process, feeling it in terms of the mood of the city, if you will. This is a good start, what we're announcing today under the governor's leadership, but I'm confident that, you know, very soon here, we'll see tangible progress on our homelessness. I have to share with you that not a day goes by where I talk to a constituent about a small business constituent or a person experiencing homelessness about the urgency. And unfortunately, there's not a button for me to push just to solve the problem like that. We're actually putting in new systems in place in the city of Seattle from a systems approach to make sure that I can be nimble, we can be quick. And so I say all that to say that in the very near future, you'll see the tangible, visible progress that people are demanding they see, particularly from our city leaders here in Seattle.
If I can follow.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Sorry, Governor. If I can just follow up briefly from Mayor Harrell. If we're going to have an Office of Intergovernmental Coordination, which we've never had before, with systems in place for regional coordination, regional outreach, and a data team, and we're going to dedicate $51 million to that. I'm very hopeful with the governor's leadership that we hope to see results. And like Mayor Harrell was saying, I don't think we can say we're going to see it in the second or third or fourth quarter, but I will say this, on a smaller scale, this city council passed the Clean Cities Initiative, which we put in well over $9 million it'll go until December of 2022. And it actually is just kind of a micro model of what the governor is doing, in that we have put together with our Clean Cities Initiative a coordinated response citywide by bringing together all of our families of Seattle Parks and Rec, Seattle Public Utilities, Seattle Department of Transportation, and HSD, all working together, not only to clean the city and bringing in human services, but providing those services. So we're all coordinated. So we were already siloed, but then we realized we needed to be coordinated. So that's why it's so wonderful that the governor is bringing forward a bigger model of what we've been doing in the city. And we've had we've had really good results so far, and expanding that on the park side. So again, I don't think we can predict like, oh, we're going to have great results in 6 months, but this is more than a great start. So thank you for your leadership, Governor.
Well, thank you. Just one comment. I think one of our difficulties in homelessness is we kind of, as a state, as a community, have not realized that you can't solve the homelessness problem without building more housing. It's physically impossible. And so a lot of what I've proposed wants to build more housing. That's necessary to solve this problem. All up and down the spectrum, low, middle, high to some degree. So we focus on that, and we're doing it as fast as possible.
Next question comes from Melissa with Crosscut. Go ahead, Melissa.
Hi there, Governor. I wanted to go back to the police bills briefly. You mentioned some changes that you think make sense that are under consideration. I'm wondering if you think the legislature was not thoughtful enough, or maybe erred in passing the bills in the fashion they did last year, or and you then signing them that way, or if then alternatively, if you think police, maybe are exaggerating the difficulties they're having with this legislation.
No, I think this is what we do. We constantly improve. And I'm glad that the legislature is considering improvements in this bill. And they've done what they should do, which is to produce a product and then review it. And if there can be improvements, you should make them. Our car makers do that, airplane manufacturers do that, and smart legislators doing that. And I think that's what they're doing. And they've seen some real world experience with this now, out on the road, so to speak. And now they're improving it. I think that's a darn good thing. And so I'm supportive of this. I'm particularly thankful for leadership of Jesse and his leadership on this effort, and certainly others. So I'm glad they're making improvements.
Up next, we'll go to Matt with Fox 13. Go ahead, Matt.
Hi, Governor. I just want to go back to Senate Bill 5662 and basically setting up the office within DSHS to work with the cities and counties to coordinate the efforts there. I think there's a fear among a lot of people here, especially in King County. We have a King County Regionalist Homelessness Authority whose creation was 3 years ago, but is still just now getting up and running. That bureaucracy may be slowing things down to get the dollars out to the cities to get people off the highways, and that this agency could be akin to that there's a new bureaucracy within DSHS. Is it this agency is going to hand out the money to the cities and the counties to help out the homelessness on the highways, or how do you envision this working?
Well, I'm reasonably confident we'll get action from this agenda item. For one, we've put real money behind it, and cities need to be effectively effectuating this to get access to the money. So I'm confident we're going to get action out of this proposal. And I think, as the leaders have indicated today, we have a broad buy-in to this approach. So I'm reasonably confident it's going to make a big difference here.
Next question comes from Joshua with KUOW. Go ahead, Joshua.
Hey there, thank you for taking my question. The missing middle housing bill, again, it's got broad support among a lot of people, but a lot of mayors and city council members are against it, including Seattle Mayor Bruce Harrell, who's on the panel today here. So I'm wondering, Mayor Harrell, have any of the legislators or the governor offered any sort of compromise that would win over your support for the missing middle bill? And Governor Inslee, I'm wondering if there's anything you're doing to try to win over skeptics.
Bruce, you want to go? I don't know, Bruce.
Sure.
Bruce? Yeah.
Sure. So to say I'm against the bill, that's a inaccurate statement. That what I've expressed and what our teams expressed in Olympia is just some concerns to make sure that, at least in Seattle, we have the level of community input that we want, that we have a unique situation here in many respects. And so the principles of increasing density, of using our zoning as a tool to achieve the right level of density and affordability, we're all in on those approaches. We also know that we have constituents out there that also sometimes want to have, I don't want to say more of a granular approach. They certainly want their the due process involved in communities. And so we're not opposed to it at all. There are just some concerns that we've asked our team to talk to legislators about to make sure that the community has the input that we want.
Yeah, from my viewpoint, I consider the mayor's leadership has been productive in this because I think he recognizes we need to build more housing for people in the middle and in the lower end, and that he's asked us to consider some ways to perfect this approach, and those are being considered. And like I said, I'm very pleased at the tenor of this conversation, considering some of those perfecting amendments that are being actively considered. So I think we're in pretty good shape in that regard. If I can, let me add one more thing too. I know that there are some city officials who have not expressed support for this provision publicly, but I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with local officials privately who say, you know, I know we have to have more density in our city. I know it is the only way to get more housing. I know we cannot solve our homelessness problem without more housing in our inner core, and I know that there's ways to do it to make sure that that coordinates with our transit options like some of these bills do. But I just take some heat when I advance these back home. It's kind of hard for me. Well, I get that. I'm an elected officer, or official, I know that. And what I do is encourage them just to blame it on me then. I'm taking some heat off the local officials, if you will, because I know that people want to address this homelessness. It is deep in the core. It disturbs people, both from a sense of compassion and just adding displeasure to their lives. Washingtonians really want a solution to this problem, but we know the only way to do that is to increase density, and that is a little more controversial. So I think the state needs to step up and take some leadership on this.
Okay, next question comes from Dan with the Chronicle. Go ahead, Dan. Dan, are you there? All right, we will try Cody with Creme. Go ahead, Cody.
Good afternoon, Governor. My question is, this is a statewide effort, but with this being a statewide effort, how do we expect this to impact Spokane and Eastern Washington in particular when we compare to Western Washington and Seattle, where before we had seen this homelessness issue be, well, more of an issue for Seattle and Western Washington, but how are we expecting this effort to really impact Spokane and the east side?
Well, with equal intense interest in trying to reduce homelessness wherever it is, and I know it is in Spokane, I know it is in Moses Lake, I know it's in Walla Walla, where I've gone to a tiny home village in Walla Walla. It's in every city virtually to some degree. So I do think that this will help cities broadly across the state of Washington, and I don't look at it as a differentiated problem or differentiated solution. Everybody needs some assistance here, and I'm happy to render it.
Governor, this is Councilmember Wilkerson from Spokane. I'd like to respond to that question. What makes me excited as a leader is that there will be some designated funding. That has been our challenge locally, as to finding the dollars that would impact these challenges and get us to some solutions. So that is my hope and optimism about this bill going forward.
All right, we will try Dan with the Chronicle one more time. Dan, are you there? Dan? Okay, any final words, Governor?
No, except I appreciate everybody's interest in this subject. I know we can make progress. We've tried to do it on a very accelerated basis, and I hope we will succeed. Thanks very much.